want to kind of set up where we're going to go over the next few weeks. It's a series called Making Change, and we do this every October. We talk about finances for two reasons. One, it's a time when we as a community start looking toward the next year, start trying to figure out where God's leading us to go. But then beyond that, it's a very practical reason we like to talk about money. I am one that does not think there should be anything we should not talk about in church. Anything. And if you take the top three most uncomfortable subjects to talk about in church, it would be politics, sex, and money, right? Making a decision to talk about politics makes me sick at my stomach. I can't take it. I'm in no mood to talk about sex with y'all. And so we're gonna talk about money for a few weeks. How's that, right? But listen, the reason that we like to do this is because we know that if we were honest with each other, we all understand money is the number one thing that couples fight about. It's the number one thing that ends up dividing families. It's the number one stressor in most of our lives. It's what keeps us up at night. We carry it with us everywhere we go. We work hard every day. We get in the hustle. We're a part of the grind. We try to earn it. We try to save it. We try to spend it, and we try to give some of it away. We try to do all the things, and it ends up consuming such a massive part of our lives. The culture in which you and I try to navigate every single day tries to push us into its way of thinking about money and about stuff and about things. And so over the next few weeks, I want us to look at how we can change the way we think and therefore end up changing the way we live. Romans chapter 12, and Paul's writing to a group of Christians who are struggling to figure out life and what life looks like when you follow in the footsteps of Jesus. And so Paul gives them in Romans 12, verse 2, I think kind of the penultimate directive that I think you really can build your whole life on. He says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by a renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. In other words, God wants to change how you and I think, because everything in life always begins with our thoughts. Paul says, don't conform to the pattern of this world. That word conform in the original language, it comes from a word that means scheme or schematic. And so what Paul is saying is that our culture is pushing us into a scheme that I would argue is fundamentally unnatural for every single human being. And Paul says, instead of buying into the scheme, be transformed by renewing of your mind. Because then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. God literally wants to change the way that you and I think about stuff and about life and about money and about faith. And when we change the way we think, it's going to empower us to live a life of faith and not fear. It's going to allow you and me to have less stress and less worry when it comes to issues of money. It's going to allow us to have less anxiety and less fear when it comes to how we navigate the financial life every single day. And I don't know where you are right now on this issue, right? Like I know some of us, you're already uptight because you think you're gonna get a big ask and you're not gonna get a big ask. I'm not trying to get in your pocket, I'm trying to get into your heart. But where I am, I would like a little bit more of that in my life. Like I think that would be good to have a little less stress, a little less anxiety, because I'm no different than you are. Things are hard right now. Certain areas of our life are very expensive. And so we've got to change how we think, because if we change how we think, we can change how we live. So over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, right? We're going to talk about worry. We're going to talk about contentment. We're going to talk about debt and savings and try to get as practical as we possibly can. We're going to talk about generosity and this call to make an investment in something that's bigger than ourselves, how we can build a legacy that will continue to impact people long after you and I leave this planet. And so what I want to do today is just kind of take a 30,000 foot view. Just want to share one principle with you. But I think it is the most important thing when it comes to our financial lives. Like the principle I want us to lean into has the power to transform us financially. It can bleed over into what we do vocationally, relationally, and I think can make a deep impact even spiritually. And this concept is the game changer. Like if you can latch onto this, you can navigate your life. And it's incredibly simple, right? Here it is. You have to acknowledge God's ownership. That's it. That's the principle. Acknowledge God's ownership. My favorite story that I think kind of gets at this, when our firstborn son was 4, we've got 3 boys. We've got a picture. Yeah, there's our cherubs right there. They're grown men now, but they were a lot. You guys heard me say that when they were growing up. We have these 3 boys. When our firstborn was 4, like one of the greatest challenges for us parenting was keeping them fed. You understand what I'm saying, parents? They were athletes. It's stunning how much these guys could eat. When they were in high school, I kid you not, we would send 2 lunches to get them to the lunch they were going to buy at school because all of them played tight end and they needed to be big, and it was like incredible. Very, very early on, Beth quit buying cereal altogether, right? Because you drop like a ton of money on a box that is 3/4 full at best. She'd bring it home. They would eat 3 bowls. And, you know, with a high school kid, a bowl's like this, not like this, and it would be gone the first day. And so she came in one day and just made this great declaration. I will not buy any more cereal. There will be no cereal in this house for the rest of your life until you can buy your own cereal. So Jack's 4, right? And back then, Taco Bell was like our best friend because you could buy a bunch of it for not a lot of money. And we never just went and got like a taco. Even when he's 4, we went and got a 6-pack of tacos. Meat and cheese only, right? Because the 4-year-old, the last thing you need to do is introduce vegetables, right? So they're always meat and cheese only, always a hard taco. So we go home and we get everything laid out. And I was on a health kick back then. And so I remember I had a piece of boneless, skinless chicken and like some steamed broccoli. And this fool's sitting there with 6 tacos. And everything in me, all I wanted was just one bite of one taco. And so we're sitting there and I'm like, hey buddy, can I have a bite of your taco? And my son, whom I love deeply, kind of dove over the edge of the table and scooped the tacos in his arm and was like, no, Dad, it's mine. He even turned his back to me at 4 years old. And every once in a while would look over his shoulder to see if I was creeping him a little bit, right? Coming after his taco. And I'll be honest with y'all, I had some thoughts in that moment. I did not necessarily share them in the way I'm going to share them with you, but I had some thoughts. My first thought in that moment was, little dude, you don't know who I am. Like, you don't know who I am. You have forgotten your place and you have forgotten my place. In fact, you're actually sitting in my place right now. This is my house. I'm sharing this house with you. That's the only reason you're even here. You're sitting at my table. Technically, I bought those tacos. That's my taco, and I'm allowing you to eat my taco at my table in my house. And because Beth was not there, I was even thinking, on top of all of that, I brought you into this world. Now, I would never say that, and I would not say that to y'all, except I know she's working right now. She's up front and not listening to the message. I didn't say any of that stuff, but I was thinking to myself, if I wanted to, bro, I could go back to Taco Bell right now, and I could literally buy all the tacos, and I could bring them home. I could bury you in tacos right now where you're sitting at my table. All I want is one bite of one taco that I bought. Now, I tell you that story because I think if we could be honest with ourselves, there are moments where you and I do the exact same thing with God. Like, if you haven't figured it out, God owns all the tacos, y'all. All of them. Meaning that God provides everything in our lives. It is all His. But somehow, when it comes to money and to things and to stuff, we get weird, do we not? Like, think about just the stuff that you have in your life. Some of us have a lot of stuff. Some of us have a little stuff. Some of us have so much stuff that it overwhelms us, and so we go out and we rent storage units just to house our stuff, to give us the space to perform our basic functions around the house. It's fascinating to me. Believe it or not, there are actual agencies that keep up with this kind of stuff. The self-storage industry is massive. If you haven't noticed, in every community, we build a lot of banks, we build a lot of doctor's offices, and we build a lot of storage units. I don't know if the three are connected, but I do think it's interesting. In America, today, there are 23 million self-storage units. 23 million. It's a $54 billion a year industry that employs 170,000 full-time employees. 170,000 people earn a living taking care of and watching over our stuff. Self-storage is recognized as an actual profession. There are entire magazines that are dedicated to it. It's crazy. There are training institutes you can go to that will teach you how to run these facilities. Every year, self-storage pros gather in Las Vegas for the Self-Storage Expo. Imagine how wild that week must be when you get together a bunch of self-storage pros and they're cutting loose in Las Vegas. It's gotta be epic. See? But the bottom line is, we've all got stuff. And most of us, if we'll think about it for just 1 second, most of us will spend an incredible amount of time taking care of our stuff. We paint and protect our stuff. We spend lots of money to insure our stuff. We pack our stuff, and we move our stuff from one place to the next to the next. Some of us have stuff that we moved out of our parents' house when we went to college or we entered the workforce. Then we got married and we added more stuff to our stuff, and we've moved that stuff from place to place to place. And after a lifetime of taking care of our stuff, the day comes when we die and we end up leaving our stuff for somebody else to take care of. And when we're gone, someone else comes in and they begin the often tedious task of sorting through our stuff. Some of y'all have been through that this year. Our kids come along and they take some of our stuff, and they throw it away, y'all. They're not blessed by it, they throw it away. Some of it will end up at Goodwill. Some of it's gonna show up on Marketplace. Some of it's gonna be on eBay. And so our stuff then gets added to their stuff. And then they spend a lifetime caring for and painting and packing and insuring and moving and storing. And then one day they die and somebody comes along and the whole process starts all over again. And when I think about stuff, what is really fascinating, some of the stuff that we currently own used to belong to somebody that we don't even know who it was. We call them antiques. And we proudly display strangers' stuff in our den, or we hang it on our walls. And what's crazy is, on a fundamental level, every human being, whether they know Jesus or they don't know Jesus, somewhere deep down inside, even if it can't be articulated, every human being knows that when we die, we cannot take our stuff with us. And yet, while we are alive, when it comes to sharing our stuff or being generous with our stuff or even giving some of our stuff away, most of us are just like my 4-year-old son. We will put our arms around it and we'll hold on to it tight and we'll look over our shoulder to make sure nobody's coming after it. We get unbelievably possessive in this area of our lives. But think about this. A lot of us in this room or watching online, we are Christians. And we will say things like, God, I trust you with my eternal salvation. Like, think about that. Like, God, everything that's got anything to do with eternity, my one and only soul, the only part of me that is going to transition from this life into the next, it's going to live on forever. I completely, utterly trust you with my salvation, but don't mess with my stuff, because my stuff is mine. And then we wonder, why do we have so much fear and so much anxiety? And why is it that money causes so much worry in this area of our lives? Well, it may be, whether consciously or subconsciously, we've kind of shut God out of that part of our life. And now what we're reaping are the consequences of that decision. Can I just tell you, if that's where you're living right now, you don't have to live your life that way. You can actually choose. So you got a choice to make. That's what it means to have free will. It's what separates our God from every other God. We are not subjects. We are not minions. We are created in the image of God. God will take, if there's 1,000 steps between us and God, God will take 999, but he asks every single one of us, can you take one step? It's free will. You can choose to acknowledge that everything in your life comes from God, and you can invite him into this part of your life. Look at what Psalm 24 says. I love this. It says, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. The world and all its people belong to him. For he laid the earth's foundation on the seas and built it on the oceans. If you go back to the original language, it's going to blow you away. In the original language, that word everything means everything. Isn't that wild? Everything in my life and everything in your life, it's all God's. God is the owner. We get to manage what he owns. Think about it this way. When you look at our culture looks at things and stuff and money kind of like this. You start with, it's all my money. I got to work hard. I've got to go through school. I got to jump through all the hoops. I got to work my way up the chain. I got to do all the things. It's my money. But that comes with some consequences. Because if it's all my money, then that means it's all my problems. Like, I got myself into this, I've got to get myself out. It's all my deal. And not only is it all my problems, then that means it's all my responsibility. I got to carry this weight around with me every single day. I got to pick myself up by my bootstraps. I got to work. I got to hustle. I got to get in the grind. I got to go work myself to the very end so I can get some more and protect what I've already got, because everything's on me. That's the scheme that our culture pushes us into. And here's the thing. You spend your life following that kind of scheme, it's going to lead to a lot of stress, is it not? That's why we freak out so much when it comes to money. That's why we freak out when it comes to any issue in life, if we haven't properly allowed God to be in the right place in our life. See, God wants us to be transformed into a new way of thinking that says, first of all, it's not all my money, it's actually all God's money. Everything I have comes from God. It's God that gave me the ability to work. It's God that gave me my health. It's God that gives me the opportunity. It is God that opens up the doors in my life. And yeah, it is mine while I'm on this planet, but everything comes from God. Therefore, I'm just a steward of what God brings into my life. And the benefit to that is it's not just my problem, it becomes our problem, right? Because you're in this with God. You're not doing it by yourself. It's like God I'm in this place and I need you to get me out of this place. We're in this thing together. And because it's our problem, then it comes with a shared responsibility. Like over the course of my life, I learned to look for the ways that God is walking with me, right? I become convinced that God's gonna see me through because God's seen me through some stuff in the past. And y'all, that's a much more peaceful way to live your life. It just is. And so when it comes to life, understanding where it all comes from is fundamental to getting life right. And you can apply that to any area of your life. Like my spouse is not in my life because she looked at me and one day thought, well, that guy is the guy I want to spend the rest of my life with. I mean, look at him. Who wouldn't want to marry a preacher and be involved in church life the whole rest of their life? That sounds like a blast. No, she's in my life because God caused our paths to cross and because we've worked hard to honor the relationship that God gave us. My spouse is a gift. The kids that we have, y'all, our kids are now having their kids. And we get to look back and see how they're starting to parent their kids. And we're starting to figure out, okay, well, maybe we didn't mess them up. Like we like what they're doing, right? Our kids are a gift. Our grandkids are a gift. The friends that I have in my life are a gift. The money that Beth and I are able to earn, our health, the fact that we still have our minds, this church, our soul, it all comes from God. Think about how different your life would be if you thought that. Where every relationship you enter into, it's not about you. It's not what you can get out of them. You're just in that relationship because you know that God brought that person into your life and you're gonna honor that. Think about how different discussions between spouses would go around money if everybody looked at it as a gift from God. We are stewards, right? Not perfect, but we're stewards. Think about the stress you could save yourself at your job. If you realize your job is the catalyst that God has given you to get you where God needs you to go, but it is not your identity. One of the great mistakes a lot of us make is we pour ourselves into our job because we think that's what we got to do. And then when something goes wrong, it's not that something's going wrong at work, it's something's going wrong inside of me. It's a tragedy when your identity gets so wrapped up in what you do for a living that you can't see that life is going on all around you. Think about just human interaction. Like if you had a bad week this week and you came in sour, even if it's something as ridiculous like I was yesterday, watched Alabama get beat, huge emotional high. Watched Tennessee get beat, total devastation. Even if that's you today, just look at what's happened in our country over the past week. Thousands and thousands of people took time off from work, pulled their kids out of school, loaded up trucks and trailers, went on wish lists and bought items, did the best they could to take it to people who are hurting. I mean, just people are good. God is in the mess, right? See, when you change your mind, you can change the way you live. When you see who you are and your place in God's kingdom, if you start to see that the way God sees it, it can relieve so much of the pain and pressure of life. Which is why we like to gather at the table the first Sunday of every month. It's a big deal because it's the one thing we have in life that levels the playing field. That takes every single human being, wherever you are in your relationship with Jesus, whether you've been walking with him for 40 years or you're still here kicking the tires trying to figure out if this thing's worth giving your life to. And all of us who find ourselves somewhere in between. Because it's a meal of grace. And you may be thinking, I don't deserve this. And you know what? None of us do. That's what makes it grace. It's God's gift. You can't beg for it, borrow it, or steal it from somebody else. You just got to receive it. On his final night, Jesus took a loaf of bread. He gave thanks and he gave it to his disciples. And he said, here, take and eat. This is my body, which is given for you. And when they finished, Jesus took a cup of wine and he gave thanks to God. And he said, here, take and drink. This is my blood, which is poured out for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. What makes today different is that it's World Communion Sunday. which means long before you and I woke up this morning and long after you and I go to bed tonight, there'll be Christians all over the planet who are gathering together to share the same meal. It's my favorite day of the year, believe it or not. More than Easter, more than Christmas. Because it's a reminder that this great, big, giant planet is actually intricately woven together through God's grace and God's mercy and God's love and God's compassion. There'll be pockets of Christians who are gathered in churches all around Ukraine this morning who'll catch their breath long enough to take communion. There'll be Christians across the Middle East. There'll be Christians in the Sudan, which actually is experiencing the worst war on the entire planet right now. Hundreds of thousands of people have been murdered. Churches have been burned to their foundation. There'll be pockets of Christians on the Sudan who'll gather under the shadow of a tree and they'll share communion. There'll be people gathered in the parking lot of Unicoi United Methodist Church and Irwin United Methodist Church who've literally lost everything over the past 7 days. And at least for a moment, maybe while they're picking up some supplies, maybe while they're checking in to see if you've heard from so-and-so back up in the holler, we haven't seen them yet, they'll share communion. It's powerful, y'all. And so today I've got some friends who are gonna come help me serve, and before they do that, I want you to just kind of check out the screen.
While they were eating, he took a loaf of bread, and after blessing it, he broke it, gave it to them and said, "Take, this is my body." Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave it to them, and all of them drank from it. He said to them, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many. Truly I tell you, I will never again drink of the fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new in the kingdom of God." When they had sung the hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives.